Have you ever been treated as if you were invisible just because you were dressed simply, as if you didn't deserve to even be looked in the eye? Today I'm going to tell you the true story of a 40-year-old woman who entered a luxury bank dressed as a domestic worker, asked to transfer 20 million, and heard the manager laugh in her face, saying, "If you have that money, I'll resign my job right now and work for you for free for the rest of my life." He turned it into a humiliating spectacle. Wealthy clients applauded. Employees took pictures. Everyone laughed as if it were the joke of the century. But no one knew who that woman was. No one knew that she had escaped extreme poverty at 16 working as a cleaning lady. No one knew that she had learned to invest by listening to conversations while cleaning offices. And absolutely no one imagined that she owned 51% of the shares of that bank. Stay until the end, because when she revealed her identity, the manager literally fell to his knees. And what she did to him and everyone else who laughed will restore your faith that justice still exists in this world. Prepare your heart, because this story will move and inspire you at the same time. Let's go. Marina Alves pushed open the bank's revolving door at 10:20 on a Wednesday under a clear blue sky. The polar air conditioning inside hit her like a thermal shock after the scorching heat outside. At 40, Marina had the unmistakable look of someone who knew manual labor. Her hands displayed calluses on the palms and dry cuticles from washing clothes, scrubbing floors, and cleaning bathrooms. She wore old jeans with a small tear at the right knee that she had sewn herself up with a different colored thread because she didn't have another pair. Her blouse was a plain, faded pink t-shirt, bought on sale 5 years ago at a popular department store. On her feet, flat rubber sandals that cost less than a meal at a simple restaurant. A worn-out fabric bag hung from her left shoulder, the kind you get as a freebie at the supermarket. Her brown hair was tied in a basic bun, with a regular elastic band, without any elaborate hairstyle. There was no makeup, no jewelry, just a cheap digital wristwatch she had worn for 10 years. Nothing about her screamed money, nothing about her suggested power, nothing about her indicated that she could buy that entire bank if she wanted to, and that was exactly how Marina planned it. The bank lobby was a cathedral of calculated opulence. Marble floors reflected the lights like a mirror. Imported crystal chandeliers worth more than popular cars. Italian designer furniture costing fortunes. Everything there whispered the same subliminal message. This space is not for just anyone. The clients present that morning were a parade of privilege. Men in tailored suits carrying leather briefcases. Women with handbags costing entire salaries. Everyone spoke in hushed voices, discreetly, as if being there were an exclusive club. When Marina entered, eyes automatically turned, and automatically filled with judgment. A woman in high heels and an expensive suit instinctively held her designer bag closer to her body, as if Marina could steal it just by passing by. A man in a pinstripe suit adjusted his tie with visible discomfort, as if her presence contaminated the refined atmosphere. 2 executives interrupted their conversation about investments to exchange glances of, "What is this person doing here?" The contrast was stark and intentional. This was a world of appearances, status and hierarchies based on clothing and accessories. Tiago Novaes, the agency's premium manager, observed everything from his office with its tinted glass walls. At 42, Tiago considered himself the emperor of that small financial kingdom. He had a degree in economics from the most expensive university in the country, a postgraduate degree from an elite institution abroad, a triplex apartment in an upscale neighborhood, and an imported sports car in his private garage. His suit was custom-made Italian, costing the equivalent of 6 months' minimum wage. His shoes were English, polished until they shone like glass. His watch was Swiss, worth more than many people earn in years of honest work. He had built his banking career by being ruthless with the small and servile with the powerful. For Tiago, humanity was clearly divided into winners and losers, and that woman in cheap clothes and a supermarket bag was obviously a loser. She must be looking for the ATM, Tiago thought, adjusting the cuffs of his silk shirt. Or she came into the wrong place. She probably came to pay an overdue bill. He smiled to himself, already anticipating the fun of redirecting that creature to her proper place. Receptionist Bruna, a 26-year-old who idolized Tiago as a mentor, also noticed the intrusion. "What an embarrassing situation," she murmured to her colleague Vanessa while pretending to organize documents on her desk. "How did security let that woman into the VIP area? We have client screening protocols." Vanessa, who had only worked there for 2 months and was still learning the bank's culture, felt a slight discomfort, but said nothing. She had been explicitly trained to direct people of simple appearance to the ATMs or the self-service area. Premium clients had a specific profile, but something about that woman's posture intrigued her. There was a strange dignity in the way she walked, a silent confidence that didn't match someone intimidated or lost. Marina approached the VIP service counter with firm, measured steps. She placed her worn bag on the polished marble with a natural gesture, as if she had every right to be there. Some clients paused their banking conversations. A lady with perfectly brushed hair looked over her Chanel glasses with an expression of scandalized disapproval. A 50-year-old businessman frowned, visibly irritated by the delay that this irregular situation would likely cause. Tiago emerged from his glass office with calculated, intimidating steps and a smile that barely reached his eyes. "Good morning. Can I help you?" The question came out in a tone that made it absolutely clear he expected to quickly escort her away. That she was in the wrong place, that she didn't belong there. Marina looked directly into his eyes without averting her gaze, without showing even a millimeter of insecurity or intimidation. "Good morning. I need to make a bank transfer from my account." Tiago could barely disguise a mocking smile. He exchanged a knowing glance with Bruna, who delicately covered her mouth to hide a malicious giggle. "Of course, ma'am. Your full name?" "Marina Alves." Tiago typed the name into the system with theatrical slowness, clearly expecting to find nothing or to find an account with a ridiculously low balance that would justify his prejudice. "Mrs. Marina," he pronounced the name as if it were an inside joke only he understood. "How much do you intend to transfer today?" 20 million, Marina replied with the same nonchalance with which she would ask for a glass of water. "The transfer needs to be processed today before 2 o'clock in the afternoon because it's for a fixed income investment that matures at 3. The silence that followed was so profound that the low hum of the air conditioner could be heard. Tiago blinked repeatedly, as if he had misheard and his brain was trying to process impossible information. Bruna choked on her own saliva and began to cough. The clients who had pretended not to be paying attention now stared shamelessly with expressions ranging from shock to anticipated amusement. A man in a suit dropped the pen he was holding. The lady with brushed hair stopped fiddling with her cell phone. Even the security guard who was far away turned his head in interest. Tiago regained his composure and let out a loud, cruel laugh that echoed throughout the entire marble lobby. 20 million, he repeated loudly enough for everyone present to hear clearly. "Bruna, did you hear that? The lady here wants to transfer 20 million. Bruna laughed along, caught up in the amusement of her boss and mentor. Other employees began to approach, curious, drawn by the unusual commotion. The situation was rapidly transforming into a public spectacle of collective humiliation. "Look, I'm going to make you an offer," Tiago continued, his voice dripping with toxic sarcasm. If you really have 20 million in that account, I'll resign from my premium manager position right now, this very moment, and work for free as your personal driver for the rest of my life. How about that? The audience of clients and employees laughed loudly. Some took out their cell phones to record what they considered a hilariously embarrassing scene. Clara Mendez, a frequent client who prided herself on her 8-figure account, commented loudly enough for everyone to hear, "That's exactly why this bank is losing the exclusivity it had. Anyone can walk in now. It completely devalues the environment." Eduardo Campos, a real estate businessman who was waiting to be served, shook his head with a mixture of condescending amusement and genuine irritation. This kind of situation delays the service for those who actually have serious business to conduct here. We waste precious time with this theatrics. The humiliation was rapidly escalating, transforming into a public social lynching. But Marina remained completely calm, motionless as a statue. Her calloused hands rested peacefully on the worn bag. Her eyes showed no fear, shame, or intimidation, only a deep and unwavering patience of someone who had seen and survived far worse situations in life. "Young man," she said to Tiago, in a surprisingly firm voice that cut through the laughter like a sharp blade, "I didn't come here for jokes or entertainment. I have a serious and urgent bank transfer to make. I'm asking you to do your job professionally." Tiago felt a slight unease at her unwavering firmness, but her arrogance was far greater than any momentary doubt. "Are you absolutely sure you haven't mixed up the numbers?" he asked in an exaggerated theatrical voice. "Perhaps it's 20,000 or 200,000, because 20 million is a lot of money, ma'am. It's more than most people here earn working a lifetime." "I know exactly how much it is," Marina replied with the same unwavering calm. "That's why I'm here in person instead of doing it through the mobile app. Transfers over 15 million require in-person authorization for added security against fraud. You should know this better than I do." The technically precise answer completely surprised Tiago. How could this woman, who looked so simple and humble, know the bank's specific internal protocols with such precision? He exchanged a visibly disconcerted look with Bruna, who also seemed confused. "Well, anyway," Tiago quickly tried to regain control of the situation, which was beginning to spiral out of control. "For transfers of this astronomical amount, we have very strict special protocols. You need to schedule an appointment at least 48 hours in advance with the High Net Worth Individuals Department, provide detailed documentary proof of the legitimate origin of the funds, and an official declaration of compatible economic capacity. And all of this needs to be done in advance. You can't just show up here without prior notice and ask to move millions." Marina tilted her head slightly to the side. "That's interesting what you're saying, because last week I transferred 25 million from this same account to another financial institution, and the entire process was completed in less than 20 minutes. I didn't need any special prior scheduling." The comment caused an uncomfortable and tense silence. Some employees exchanged nervous glances. Vanessa, the youngest employee, discreetly accessed the banking system to check the complete account history. What she saw on the screen made her eyes widen in utter shock, but she still didn't say anything, just continued staring at the monitor with an expression of growing disbelief. Bruna, instinctively sensing that something was wrong, but absolutely unwilling to admit it aloud, tried to maintain a facade of superiority. "Madam, perhaps you're confusing different accounts in different banks. Sometimes simpler people have several small accounts scattered around and end up getting confused about the amounts." "I don't get confused with my own money," Marina replied with absolute calm. "This is my main account, the same account I opened exactly 19 years ago, when this bank was still a small credit union with only 3 branches. Tiago felt a cold chill run down his spine. 19 years ago, the bank really was a small cooperative that was later bought, restructured and transformed into the large financial institution it was today. How did that woman know this with such precision? Such information wasn't public. Even so, he couldn't back down now in front of all those clients and employees watching. His professional reputation was at stake. His image as a powerful manager was being tested. "Look, ma'am," he said in a deliberately harsher, more authoritative tone, "I'll check this account you say you have, but I must warn you that transfers of extremely high amounts like this need to go through rigorous compliance and risk management analysis. It can take several business days." Marina sighed softly. "All right then. In that case, please connect me immediately with the regional director. I urgently need to resolve this today, and if you can't or won't help me, I'll speak directly to someone who has the authority and competence to resolve it." The audacity of the demand made Tiago laugh sarcastically again. "You want to speak personally with the regional director, with Dr. Alberto Mendez, one of the most important and powerful executives of this financial institution, and you honestly think he's going to see a—" He paused theatrically, searching for the right word to maximize the humiliation. "A regular customer without a prior appointment?" "I'm not regular," Marina said simply, her voice firm as a rock. "And yes, he will see me. You can call now." That's when Vanessa, who had continued silently investigating the system, did something courageous that would change everything. "Mr. Tiago," she called, her voice trembling with nervousness. "May I speak with you for a moment? In private? It's urgent." Tiago rolled his eyes in visible irritation. "Vanessa, I'm clearly busy here resolving this situation." "It's very important," she insisted, her face visibly pale. "Extremely important and urgent." Tiago, noticing the unusual seriousness in the new employee's voice, apologized with feigned politeness and walked over to where Vanessa was sitting in front of the computer. She turned the monitor screen towards him, pointing to the numbers that shone there in large font. "Mr. Tiago," she whispered softly so only he could hear, "her account has 62 million reais in immediately available balance. And look at the complete transaction history for the last 12 months. There are dozens of transactions of millions every week, investments, withdrawals, international transfers. She's not lying or exaggerating anything." Tiago literally felt the ground disappear beneath his expensive feet. His eyes quickly scanned the screen. Current balance, 62,147,320 drills. History, showing weekly transactions ranging from 5 to 30 million. Account status flashing red, absolute diamond client, maximum priority service, direct contact with the presidency. And then he saw something that made his blood run cold. In the special observations section of the account, written in red capital letters was, "Majority shareholder, 51% shareholding, unrestricted access to all strategic decisions." Tiago felt his legs literally weaken. His hands began to tremble visibly. His face turned as white as a sheet. His mouth went dry instantly. Bruna immediately noticed the drastic and alarming change in her boss's expression. "Tiago, what was that? What happened?" He couldn't answer. He just kept glancing alternately at the computer screen and at Marina, who stood there calmly waiting, as if she had all the time in the world. Clara Mendez, the wealthy client who had made malicious comments about the loss of exclusivity, began to grow visibly impatient. "Tiago, when exactly are you going to resolve this whole situation? I have an important appointment in 40 minutes, and I can't waste my precious time waiting." But Tiago barely heard her. His entire world was literally crumbling. He had just publicly humiliated, in front of dozens of witnesses, several of them recording on video, the majority owner of the bank. The woman who owned 51% of the shares of the institution where he worked. The woman who had absolute power to fire everyone from the president to the last intern. and he had done it in the cruelest and most public way possible. Bruna, realizing something was very, very wrong, approached and discreetly glanced at the screen Vanessa still had open. When she read the complete information, her expression instantly shifted from arrogant confidence to utter terror. Her face turned red, then white, then red again. Her hands began to tremble uncontrollably. She looked at Marina and then at Tiago, her eyes silently, desperately pleading that this was a system error, a technical bug, anything but the brutal truth. But Vanessa shook her head slightly, silently confirming that everything was absolutely real and verified. Tiago, his legs barely supporting him, walked back to the counter. His arrogance had completely evaporated. His face was covered in cold sweat. His hands were visibly trembling. Mrs. Alves, he stammered pathetically. There's been a terrible misunderstanding here." Marina looked at him with those same calm, steady eyes. "Misunderstanding? You offered to resign and work for free as my driver if I had the money you said I had. So now it's time for you to keep your word, isn't it? Or was that just to publicly humiliate me?" The silence that fell over the agency was so heavy, so dense, that it seemed to literally suck the oxygen from the air. All the clients who had laughed openly minutes before were now in deathly silence, petrified. Clara Mendez felt her stomach churn violently. Eduardo Campos, who had complained about the wasted time, felt his mouth dry as a desert. The employees who had approached to watch the amusement were now desperately trying to discreetly move away, to hide. Bruna was visibly on the verge of a panic attack. The security guard, who had enjoyed the situation, was now staring fixedly at the floor, avoiding all gazes. The people who had taken out their cell phones to record Marina's humiliation were now quickly putting away their devices, deleting videos, praying that no one had recorded them recording. Tiago opened and closed his mouth several times in succession, without being able to form coherent words. Finally, he managed to articulate, "Mrs. Alves, I honestly didn't know who you were. If I had known your true identity, I never would have—" Marina interrupted him with a firm but surprisingly unmoved voice. "And why exactly should that make any difference in how I'm treated? Why would you treat me with respect and dignity only if you knew I was rich or powerful? Everyone who walks through that door deserves to be treated with basic respect, no matter how they're dressed, how much money they have in their account, or their social standing. Human dignity is priceless." The moral lesson cut through the air like a sharp, precise blade. Several customers lowered their eyes, completely ashamed. Vanessa, the only employee who had been concerned from the beginning, felt a mixture of profound relief and genuine pride for not having actively participated in the collective humiliation. Marina continued in a calm but firm voice. "I came here today purposely dressed exactly like this, to see with my own eyes how my employees treat clients who appear to have neither money nor power. In the last 8 months, I have received 517 formal written complaints about systematic discriminatory treatment in our branches. Humble people being humiliated, workers being belittled, retirees being ignored and mistreated. I decided to personally verify, in person, whether these serious complaints were true or exaggerated." Bruna began to cry silently, tears streaming down her made-up face. Her promising career, which seemed so bright, was completely crumbling before her eyes. She had blindly followed Tiago's example in absolutely everything, absorbed his toxic values without question, copied his arrogant and discriminatory behavior, and now she would pay the terrible price. Tiago tried one last desperate move. "Mrs. Alves, please, it was a terrible and unforgivable mistake. I can completely change things. I can personally retrain the entire team. We can implement new, rigorous protocols for humanized service. Please, I beg you, give me a chance to correct this." Marina picked up her battered bag from the marble counter. Tiago, for years you had countless daily chances to treat people with basic respect. You deliberately chose not to. You chose to build your professional identity on humiliating the most vulnerable. Opportunities exist for those who recognize them when they appear and seize them. Yours is definitely over. She turned to the customers who were watching the whole scene in absolute awkward silence. Clara Mendes tried to leave discreetly, but Marina called her back. "Mrs. Clara, you said that the bank is losing its exclusivity because anyone can enter now. You're right. Anyone, absolutely any human being, regardless of social class, race, appearance, gender, or bank balance, can enter my branches, and they will be treated with the same utmost respect that we dedicate to our wealthiest clients. If this deeply bothers you, feel completely free to look for another bank." Clara blushed with deep embarrassment. "Mrs. Alves, I didn't mean exactly that." "You don't need to explain yourself now," Marina interrupted gently. "But perhaps it's time for you to reflect deeply on what kind of person you genuinely want to be. Material wealth can be lost in an instant, in a day. Character is what remains forever." Eduardo Campos, the businessman who had complained about the wasted time, tried to approach submissively. "Mrs. Alves, I'm Eduardo Campos, owner of Campos Imóveis. You've probably heard of mine." "I know exactly who you are," Marina cut him off firmly. "And I know your company currently has 2 commercial loans, totaling $4.5 million with this bank. Perhaps you should think very carefully before publicly disparaging clients in establishments your company financially depends on to operate." Eduardo paled dramatically. His company's loans were in the process of being renewed. If Marina decided not to renew in retaliation, his company could literally go bankrupt in months. "Mrs. Alves, please, it was just an extremely unfortunate and stupid comment. It wasn't anything personal against you." Marina sighed. "Mr. Eduardo, I'm not going to harm your business out of petty revenge. That's not how I operate or conduct business, but I sincerely hope you use this painful experience to grow as a human being." She turned her attention to Vanessa, the young employee who had tried to verify the information and alert Tiago. "Vanessa, how long have you worked here?" "Only 2 months, Mrs. Alves," Vanessa replied in a trembling but clear voice. "You were the only person here who showed genuine concern and tried to verify the objective facts before making hasty judgments. That demonstrates solid character. Starting tomorrow, you will be promoted to supervisor of this branch." Vanessa's eyes widened in complete disbelief. "Me, ma'am? But I'm very new to the company. I don't have enough experience yet." "You'll quickly gain technical expertise through work," Marina said, with a genuinely kind smile. "Character and integrity you already possess naturally, and at the end of the day, it's character that makes all the real difference." "As for you, Tiago," Marina continued, turning to the trembling manager, "your duties at this bank end immediately and definitively now. Not out of personal revenge, but because a manager must be a living example of respect and professional integrity. You have failed completely and publicly." Tiago literally slumped into a nearby chair, the weight of reality finally hitting him with full force. His 16-year career had ended in 16 minutes because of his own toxic arrogance. "Bruna, you're also dismissed," Marina continued. "A receptionist who actively participates in and enjoys the systematic humiliation of clients has no place on my team." Bruna sobbed louder, but didn't try to argue or defend herself. She knew deep down that there was no possible argument that could save her situation. Marina looked around the branch, at the terrified employees and embarrassed clients. "I want to make it absolutely clear to everyone here," she said, her voice echoing throughout the entire lobby, "that this bank was originally built for the purpose of serving people, all people without exception. It doesn't matter if you're a multinational CEO or a building cleaner. It doesn't matter if you're wearing an Italian Armani suit or thrift store clothes. Every human being who crosses that threshold deserves basic respect, professional attention, and fundamental dignity, because dignity has no market price. Respect cannot be bought with money, and humanity should never depend on one's bank balance. Clara Mendez, who was still present, mustered the courage to timidly ask, "Mrs. Alves, could you tell us how you reached this position? How did someone who looks so—" She paused, desperately searching for words that wouldn't offend further. "So simple and humble, manage to become the majority owner of a bank?" Marina smiled. "It's a very long story, Mrs. Clara, but the short and direct answer is extremely hard work, brutal sacrifice, self-taught financial education, and a great deal of humility. I started my professional life at 16 as a maid. I cleaned the houses and apartments of wealthy people, and it was precisely while cleaning an investment consulting office at night that I first learned about the financial market. I spent years obsessively studying everything I could find about investments. I saved every penny I could. I religiously invested everything that was left over. In 24 years of absolute discipline, I transformed an initial 2,000 reais into tens of millions. And throughout this entire journey, I never ever forgot where I came from. The profound impact of her words was visible. Several customers who had looked at her with cruel disdain minutes before now looked at her with something close to genuine admiration and respect. Eduardo Campos approached again, but this time with seemingly genuine humility. "Mrs. Alves, I would like to apologize sincerely and deeply, and if you allow me, I would immensely like to hear your full story someday. At lunch, perhaps. I clearly still have much to learn about life and about people." Marina observed the man carefully for a long moment. She saw sincerity where before there had only been empty arrogance. "Very well, Mr. Eduardo, but not in any expensive luxury restaurant. Let's go to a simple and honest place, one of those that serve real food made with care. And you will pay the bill since you have so much money," she said with a slight smile that completely relieved the tension. Eduardo smiled too, genuinely this time. "It would be an immeasurable honor, Mrs. Alves." Marina then did something absolutely no one expected. She turned to Tiago, who was still sitting in a state of deep shock. "Tiago, stand up now." Tiago obeyed mechanically, robotically, his legs barely able to support him. "Look directly at me," she ordered with gentle firmness. He raised his red eyes and met Marina's firm but not cruel gaze. "I'm firing you today, right now," she said clearly. "But I'm not condemning you eternally. You have genuine talent for numbers, a natural ability with clients when you genuinely want to, solid technical knowledge of finance. Your fundamental problem is not professional incompetence, it's character. And character can be built, rebuilt, transformed if you are genuinely willing to do the hard and painful inner work of honestly looking inside yourself and profoundly changing." Tiago couldn't hold back the tears that began to fall. For the first time in years, perhaps entire decades, he felt something beyond superficial arrogance and false superiority. He felt genuine, profound shame. And with the shame came the first faint spark of real possibility for change. Marina continued, "You're fired from this bank for good, but I'm going to give you an honest letter of recommendation, not a false, lying letter saying you're perfect. A brutally honest letter saying you have excellent technical skills, but urgently need to develop true humility and genuine empathy. What you do with this unlikely second chance is entirely up to you." Tiago wiped away tears with the back of his trembling hand. "Miss Alves, I thank you so much. I absolutely don't deserve this unexpected kindness." "That's precisely why I'm giving it," Marina replied softly. "True kindness isn't about deserving. It's about consciously choosing to be better, more compassionate than those who have hurt us." Bruna, who had overheard the entire conversation, approached timidly. "Mrs. Alves, can I also have an unlikely second chance?" Marina observed her carefully. She saw a 26-year-old who had followed the completely wrong example. "How old are you, Bruna?" 26, Mrs. Alves. "You are still very young. You literally have your whole life ahead of you. Learn deeply from this terrible mistake. Use it as powerful fuel to become a genuinely better person. I will give you the exact same honest letter of recommendation I gave Tiago. The rest is entirely up to you and your choices." Bruna began to cry again, but this time it wasn't just despair, it was also deep gratitude. She had expected to be completely destroyed. Instead, she was receiving a harsh but necessary lesson and an unexpected second chance. Marina looked at Vanessa, the new supervisor. "Vanessa, starting tomorrow morning, you will implement a completely new mandatory training program for all employees in all branches. Not about technical banking procedures, about fundamental respect, genuine empathy, and universal human dignity. We will train our entire team to see each client as a complete human being with a unique history, legitimate dreams, and intrinsic value, completely independent of their bank account." "Yes, Ms. Alves," Vanessa replied, her voice firm despite the obvious emotion. "I will do the best job humanly possible." Marina then addressed everyone present, employees and clients. "I'm going to leave now to make my 20 million transfer at another branch of ours in another neighborhood, where the manager deeply understands the true meaning of universal respect. But before I go, I want to say one last important thing." She paused deliberately, making sure absolutely everyone was listening. "I came from the bottom, very, very low. I worked cleaning other people's floors, washing other people's clothes, serving coffee to executives. I was discriminated against thousands of times throughout my life because of my simple appearance, my humble origins, my low social class. And every single time I was discriminated against or humiliated, I made a solemn promise to myself. When I finally had real power, I would use that power exclusively to build a more just and equal world, never to take petty revenge or perpetuate the vicious cycle of humiliation." Several clients discreetly wiped away tears. Clara Mendez was visibly moved to tears. "So my sincere request to all of you here is very simple," Marina continued. "The next time you see someone simply dressed, with a humble appearance, looking like someone who works hard, remember this story deeply. Remember that you know absolutely nothing about who that person is. You don't know their complete story. You don't know their secret dreams. You don't know their invisible struggles. You don't know their real worth. And even if that person is truly materially poor, even if they genuinely have no money at all, they still absolutely and completely deserve to be treated with basic dignity, because human dignity is priceless. Respect cannot be bought, and humanity should never, under any circumstances, depend on bank balances." The silence that followed was profound, but completely different from the previous silence. It was a silence of genuine reflection, of constructive shame, of painful but necessary learning. To truly understand who Marina Alves was and how she got to where she was, we need to go back 24 years to when a thin, frightened 16-year-old timidly knocked on the door of an upper-middle-class apartment looking for her first job as a maid. Marina wasn't born with a silver spoon in her mouth. Quite the opposite. She was born into an extremely poor family, the daughter of a seamstress who worked 12 hours a day and an alcoholic father who rarely worked. She left school formally at 14 to work in a textile factory and help financially at home when her mother became seriously ill. At 16, she got her first job as a maid, cleaning a huge apartment 5 times a week. Her employer, an advertising executive, was cold but paid on time. And it was there, cleaning that apartment while her employer worked, that Marina saw for the first time something that would change her life forever: books on investing on the shelf. One day, while cleaning her boss's office, Marina saw an open book on the table, The Richest Man in Babylon. Curious, she picked up the book and read a few pages while waiting for the floor to dry. The words seemed written specifically for her. They talked about always saving at least 10% of everything you earn. They talked about making money work for you instead of you working only for money. They talked about the importance of investing consistently instead of just keeping money idle. Marina read the entire book in a week, secretly, 30 minutes every night before bed in the small room she shared with her younger sister. When she finished, something fundamental had permanently changed within her. It wasn't enough to just work hard physically. She needed to work intelligently with money. She urgently needed to learn how to make her money grow and multiply. She began to pay obsessive attention to her boss's phone conversations. She heard completely foreign terms like stocks, real estate funds, direct treasury bonds, dividends, compound interest. Initially, she understood almost nothing, but she wrote down absolutely everything in a tiny notebook she carried hidden in her apron pocket. Then in the early hours of the morning, when she couldn't sleep, she searched for the terms on the internet using the basic cell phone she had received as a used gift. Slowly, very slowly, she began to understand how the mysterious and fascinating world of finance and investments worked. She discovered that anyone, absolutely any human being, could invest, not just the rich. She discovered that there were financial investments that started with literally 50 reais. She discovered that the fundamental secret wasn't having a lot of money to start with, but simply starting small and letting time work miracles through compound interest. At 18, Marina made her first formal investment ever. She took 2,000 reais she had saved over a whole year of extreme sacrifice, literally saving every possible penny, and bought her first shares in a conservative investment fund that yielded slightly more than traditional savings accounts. The bank manager, where she tried to open the account, barely disguised his condescending smile when he saw a young domestic worker wanting to invest only 2,000 reais. But Marina completely ignored it. She wasn't doing it to impress absolutely anyone. She was planting a small but powerful seed for her own future. In the following months, she religiously added 200 reais a month to that investment. Those 200 reais were sorely missed. 200 reais meant eating less, walking more instead of taking the bus, mending old clothes instead of buying new ones. But Marina had profoundly learned the fundamental difference between sacrifice and investment. Sacrifice is giving up something without any return. Investment is strategically giving up something today to have exponentially more tomorrow. In 1 year, she had 6,000 reais invested. In 2 years, 15,000. By this point, the bank manager who had laughed at her now greeted her with genuine respect, not because she still had a lot of money, but because she demonstrated rare consistency, an extraordinary quality even among the very wealthy. It was at the age of 22 that Marina had her first great revolutionary financial insight. Working as a maid in an investment consultant's apartment, she casually overheard him say on the phone that an emerging technology company was going public. Marina wasn't a formal employee, just the outsourced housekeeper. So obviously, she didn't have privileged access. But that planted a powerful idea in her curious mind. If that particular company was going public, and even professional financial advisors were excited to buy shares, perhaps it really was a good investment. She obsessively studied everything she could find about that company. She researched news, she analyzed growth figures, she read expert analyses. And she concluded that yes, it was definitely worth the calculated risk. When the company finally went public, Marina used all 15,000 reais she had saved with so much sacrifice and bought shares. Neighbors thought it was absolute madness. Her family considered it unforgivable irresponsibility, but Marina trusted her own careful analysis. In the first 6 months, the stocks fell dramatically. Marina saw her 15,000 turn into 12,000, then 10,000, then 8,000. People around her said, "I told you it was crazy." But she didn't panic sell. She had studied enough to know that the stock market is extremely volatile in the short term, but tends statistically to grow in the long term if the underlying company is fundamentally sound. And that company was sound. After a whole year, the stocks finally started to rise. In 2 years, her 15,000 had turned into 38,000. In 3 years, 80,000. Marina learned a fundamental lesson that would change her life. Disciplined patience is the most powerful secret weapon of truly successful long-term investors. With 80,000 reais at 25 years old, Marina did something revolutionary that would change her trajectory forever. She bought her first property, not to live in, but specifically to invest and generate passive income. It was a small 40-square-meter apartment in a working-class neighborhood in need of substantial renovations, and the owner was desperate to sell quickly. She managed to negotiate a price of 78,000 reais, using the 80,000 plus 10,000 she borrowed from a friend. She completely renovated it herself on weekends for 3 months, painting walls, fixing faucets, and replacing flooring. She rented it for 900 reais a month. The loan payment was 600. She had 300 reais in net profit each month. More importantly, she had discovered the extraordinary power of appreciating assets. In those same 2 years that she comfortably paid off the loan, the apartment appreciated significantly. What she bought for 78,000 was now worth 120,000. She had transformed 80,000 into 120,000 without doing practically anything other than owning the property. Marina strategically sold that valuable apartment, took the net 120,000 reais, and bought 3 smaller apartments in similarly opportune conditions. She methodically renovated them all. She rented them all out. The combined monthly net profit was now 1,400 reais, but crucially, she had 3 assets appreciating simultaneously instead of just one. In 5 years of systematically using this proven strategy of buying low, renovating, renting, waiting for appreciation, selling high and buying more, Marina had 18 small apartments and a robust passive income stream of 7,000 reais monthly. At 30, for the first time in her entire life, she earned more money from automatic rentals than from her active job as a domestic worker. But she didn't stop working cleaning houses. She continued working, not because she needed to financially survive, but because that job kept her firmly grounded in reality, and because it was there, cleaning the offices of investment and consulting firms, that she continued to learn valuable secrets for free. It was at 33 that Marina learned of a unique opportunity that would change absolutely everything. The small credit union where she kept her main account was being sold by its owners. The owners wanted to retire but couldn't find a buyer because the cooperative was facing serious structural financial difficulties. Marina saw explosive potential where all the other experienced investors saw only risk and inevitable losses. The cooperative had terrible and amateurish management, that was obvious, but it had something extremely valuable, a solid base of absolutely loyal customers, mostly simple and hard-working people like she had always been. Marina strategically sold half of her properties, pooled all her cash into various investments, took out a large bank loan using the remaining properties as solid collateral, and made a bold offer for 30% of the cooperative. The desperate owners quickly accepted. Marina became a minority shareholder in a small financial institution, literally on the verge of total bankruptcy. For the next 7 years, she obsessively worked 16 hours a day, radically transforming that moribund cooperative. She implemented modern technology, ruthlessly cut unnecessary costs, and strategically focused on exceptionally serving small business owners and workers whom large banks systematically ignored. She created genuinely simple financial products that ordinary people could easily understand. The cooperative began to grow exponentially. In 3 years, it had tripled in size. In 5, it had grown tenfold. Serious investors began to take a genuine interest. Marina bought more shares whenever possible, with every penny available. By age 37, she owned 42%. By age 39, after a crucial investment round that she personally led, she owned 51%. She was the absolute majority shareholder. The small cooperative was now a highly respected regional bank with 80 branches, and Marina Alves, the former domestic worker, was its undisputed owner. But she never forgot where she came from. She continued to live in a relatively simple apartment. She continued to wear normal, inexpensive clothes. She continued to treat absolutely everyone, from the president to the janitor, with exactly the same fundamental respect. And that is precisely why, when she began receiving hundreds of serious complaints about systematic discrimination in the branches, she decided to see for herself. Which brings us back to that day at the bank. 8 months after Tiago's public humiliation and the subsequent dismissals, the bank branch had been completely transformed, beyond recognition. Vanessa, the young woman who had been promoted to supervisor at 26, had implemented profound and lasting changes. Every new employee underwent mandatory 5-day training course, not on technical banking procedures, but specifically on genuine empathy, universal respect, and human dignity. There were moving lectures with people from diverse backgrounds, sharing their real-life stories of overcoming adversity. There were intense simulations where experienced employees were deliberately treated the way they used to treat humble clients, so they could experience it firsthand. Marina visited the branch religiously once a week, always dressed in her characteristic simple clothes. But now every employee greeted her not out of fear or obligation, but out of genuine respect and sincere admiration. And crucially, they treated all other clients, rich or poor, well-dressed or simply dressed, with the same utmost attention and fundamental dignity. The story had spread like wildfire. Other competing banks began implementing similar training programs. Specialized media outlets wrote dozens of articles about the billionaire banker who dressed as a maid to test her own employees. Marina became an international example of purposeful leadership. Tiago, the arrogant former manager, had an extremely difficult but profoundly transformative journey. He spent 4 months completely unemployed, living exclusively on the kind, honest letter of recommendation Marina had given him. But the brutal public humiliation had broken him in a painful but absolutely necessary way. He began serious psychological therapy. He started doing unpaid volunteer work in underprivileged communities. He finally began to understand, to truly understand deeply, that human value has absolutely nothing to do with a bank account. A year and a half after being publicly fired, he got a job as a manager at a small credit union that exclusively served family farmers. The salary was literally a quarter of what he earned before, but something fundamental had permanently changed in him. He treated each farmer with dirty boots and calloused hands exactly as he would treat a multinational CEO. Because he had learned, the hard way, that appearance means absolutely nothing about human value, Bruna, the arrogant former receptionist, also underwent a painful transformation. She humbly returned to her studies, earned a degree in psychology, and specialized in human resources and organizational development. Today, she works at a consulting firm, helping organizations create corporate cultures of respect and genuine inclusion. She uses her own shameful story as a living example of what not to do. Clara Mendez, the wealthy client who had made cruel comments about the loss of exclusivity, had a profound spiritual awakening. She began to seriously question her unearned privileges and ingrained prejudices. She started doing volunteer work, teaching basic financial literacy to women in underprivileged communities. He discovered that teaching humble people to invest was infinitely more rewarding than flaunting inherited wealth. Eduardo Campos, the arrogant businessman, kept his promise and had lunch with Marina at an extremely simple restaurant. For 3 hours, he listened to the complete and detailed story of how she escaped absolute poverty through discipline and investments. He returned home completely transformed. He implemented an aggressive inclusion program in his company that gave real opportunities to young people from disadvantaged communities. He discovered that diversity was not just empty political correctness. It was genuinely good for business because it brought perspectives that he, in his bubble of privilege, would never naturally have. Vanessa became one of the best supervisors the bank had ever had. Under her inspiring leadership, that particular branch became a national benchmark in humanized customer service. Employees who worked there reported the highest rates of job satisfaction. Clients constantly praised the genuinely welcoming environment, and the branch's profitability grew by 42% because well-treated clients are deeply loyal clients. 2 years after the transformative incident, Marina was invited to give a lecture at the largest conference of business leaders in the country. The auditorium was absolutely packed with CEOs, company presidents, and top-level executives, all in expensive suits, luxury watches, and imported cars in their garages. Marina took the stage, wearing exactly the same simple clothes as always, faded jeans, a pink blouse, and worn sandals. The initial silence was deafening and awkward. Some executives exchanged completely confused glances, but Marina began to speak calmly. She told her complete story, without omitting anything, from the maid who cleaned other people's floors to the bank owner. From the 2,000 reais invested to the 60 million accumulated. From the frightened teenager to the internationally respected businesswoman. But the most impactful part of the lecture was when she spoke specifically about that day at the bank. "I could have walked into that branch and immediately identified myself as the owner," she said clearly. "I could have completely avoided all the public humiliation, but I deliberately chose not to. Do you know exactly why? Because I wanted to authentically see who my employees really were when they thought they could humiliate without absolutely any consequences." She paused for a long, deliberate time. "And I discovered something extremely painful, but absolutely necessary. I discovered that we had created an organizational culture where superficial appearance was worth more than essential humanity, where respect was given only to those who outwardly seemed to deserve it, where dignity had a market price." The auditorium was in absolute silence. "The question I leave for you, leaders," she continued firmly, "is this. If you were to walk into your own companies in disguise today, how would you be honestly treated? If your employees didn't know who you really are, would you see universal respect or systemic discrimination? Would you see genuine empathy or toxic arrogance?" Several powerful executives lowered their eyes, completely ashamed. Some took out tissues to wipe away discreet tears. "Because true leadership isn't about being above people," Marina continued passionately. "It's about consistently lifting people up. It's not about showing power. It's about genuinely empowering others. It's not about being served. It's about serving with humility." The lecture ended with an enthusiastic standing ovation that lasted a full 7 minutes. But the impact lasted infinitely longer. Dozens of companies implemented similar programs. Hundreds of executives profoundly rethought their attitudes. Thousands of employees were treated with more dignity because their leaders finally understood the lesson. 3 years after the incident, Marina received a completely unexpected email. It was from Tiago. It read, "Ms. Alves, I have just been promoted to Director of People and Culture at the cooperative bank where I work. And the first thing I did was implement exactly the empathy training you created. I wanted to thank you deeply for not destroying me when you easily could have, for giving me a second chance when I absolutely didn't deserve it. But mainly, for teaching me that being publicly humiliated was paradoxically the best gift I ever received. Because it made me human again." Marina replied, "Tiago, you weren't humiliated. You were publicly unmasked. True humiliation is what you systematically did to others. What you felt was the necessary pain of seeing who you had become. I am genuinely happy that you used that pain to grow. Continue being this new person. The world urgently needs more leaders who know humility." Today, 5 years after that transformative day, Marina Alves is recognized not as the billionaire who dresses as a poor person, but as the visionary leader who completely revolutionized banking culture. Her bank is an international benchmark in inclusion, diversity, and genuinely humanized service. Vanessa became a regional director, the youngest in the institution's history, proving that character and competence matter infinitely more than age. Tiago is now one of the most respected consultants nationally in organizational culture, using his story of downfall and redemption to transform hundreds of companies. Bruna opened her own HR consultancy, focused exclusively on creating corporate environments based on respect. Clara Mendes donated half of her inherited fortune to financial inclusion programs, saying she learned that wealth without purpose is completely empty. Eduardo Campos transformed his company into a benchmark of social responsibility, creating real opportunities for hundreds of underprivileged young people. And the bank branch where it all happened? Today, there's a huge sign at the entrance that says, "Here, every person is unconditionally welcome." Wealth does not define human value. Character does. Marina still visits that branch religiously every week. She still dresses in extremely simple clothes, and she's still treated with profound respect, not because she owns the place, but because they've finally learned there that every human being deserves dignity. This story makes us think deeply about how many times we hastily judge people by their appearance. How many extraordinary opportunities to meet someone incredible do we miss because we decide in 3 seconds that that person wasn't worth our attention? If this message touched you, if it made you reflect honestly, if it inspired you to treat people better, like this video now, comment telling us about a situation where you judged someone by their appearance and were completely wrong, and share it with that person who needs to understand that dignity is priceless. See you in the next video.